Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast for media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and skillies.
Yep.
I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine, Stryker, and LuckyEevee. Today is our 17th episode, and we're discussing 1993's The Pink Panther episode, Muff the Magic Dragon. So, let's get things started. Yep, so the Pink Panther started off as a character in the opening credits of the movie as the same name. Now, a lot of movies in the 1960s, it was kind of a trend for them to start with basically animated opening credits. Even like at one point, B movies were actually managing to hire animation studios to do the animation for their credits. But Pink Panther, I think, is the one that really took off and is really the one that everyone remembers.
Strangely enough, brief tangent, but a movie from the early 90s that had freaking Antonio Banderas did the same thing. It wasn't exactly from the 60s, but it's still something that shows that the trend is still alive to this day, surprisingly.
Oh no, it definitely is. You have stuff like Steven Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can that has a fantastic animated opening that definitely calls back to it. You have stuff like
the
Deadpool,
Labyrinth from,
which does it with the credits, but it's a similar detail.
Oh yeah,
and yeah, like I say, so the Pink Panther, of course, he was tongue to it. Sorry, the Pink Panther was successful enough to where he had a series of shorts in like the 60s and 70s and that, and they did pretty good. They were done by I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. Depractics Feeling, I think, and they were a really, really good, animated team. They, formerly were with Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes, that Termite Terrace, and they did a fantastic job. Now, to go on a brief tangent.
Actually, speaking of brief tangents, did the movie come before the cartoons?
Movie came before the cartoon, yeah.
Well, damn, that is a very interesting surprise. Now your tangent.
Yeah, now to go on a little brief tangent about the movies. Probably the best Pink Panther movie is actually the second one, A Shot in the Dark. And it's ironic because that's the only Pink Panther movie that has nothing to do with the Pink Panther itself at all. Like, the character doesn't show up in the opening credits, although Inspector Clouseau does. They don't even play the theme song, but it is the best movie, and it's probably the only one with an actual cohesive plot and story. And like I say, with the Pink Panther movies, we'll talk a little bit more about them later on, the later ones. But Peter Sellers was one of those actors. He was a genius. He was, an absolute, comedic, masterpiece in that. He was also pretty insane. I don't know if you've seen the biopic called The Life and Times of Peter Sellers. There's a part in it where he's filming Dr. Strangelove, and his mother comes to the set, and he literally cannot get out of character just to greet her hello. He's still acting like, Dr. Strangelove, the whole with the Nazism, and trying to strangle himself with his own hand and things like that. And she just looks so horrified at this. And it's a shame because he really was such a comedic genius, but he was also a very sadly messed up man.
Yeah,
but anyway,
very devoted, that's for sure.
Yep, very much so. But anyway, getting back to this, so the Pink Panther shorts were pretty successful. In the 60s and 70s, they went away for a little while, like everything does. Then in the early 90s, it was revived for a TV show simply called The Pink Panther. And they did one very big change with the show. They did a couple of ones, they added some more reoccurring characters, some different kinds of plot lines. That the biggest change and the most notable change to the series was that the Panther was given a voice.
Yeah.
Now, he talked a couple of times in the original shorts, but those are one-off gags. This was, a voice for the entire series.
And, okay, I will defend the voice a little bit. It has charm. It certainly, the person who plays the Pink Panther, they certainly knows how to, do accents and whatnot, which is very much interesting, but, yeah, it's very weird. This Pink Panther basically has Pink Panther to me basically has the Charlie Chaplin effect. He sounds better silent, or rather, he does better silent than actually speaking. Not to say his speaking roles are bad. Far from it, honestly. I rewatched it, and I ultimately
exactly
got the sense that the person who was doing it was actually trying, but yeah, I feel it would have been a little better if it was... I feel like keeping it silent for the later stuff, like the 2010 stuff, certainly helped a lot more.
Exactly. His voice actor here was Matt Frewer. He's probably best known for playing the character Max Headroom in the 80s. He was also Pain in Hercules and on Star Trek The Next Generation, a bunch of credits. You probably have heard him sometime in your life. And he is a very good voice actor, but my opinion, and he has a good voice, and he's doing the best he can with the thing, and he does kind of fit, but like you said, it really doesn't work for me because, again, the Pink Panther is a character that works best when, he's silent or like he's Chaplin-esque. That even if he was to speak, he should do it like almost very, very minimally. To have him with this kind of personality, it really doesn't feel like it's connected to the like original shorts in any way. And I granted, they're trying to do their own thing, and in some way I respect that. But on another hand, it really is almost nothing like what the original short films basically were. This was them trying to do their own thing. Now, with that in mind, this was a very cute episode. I really, really enjoyed this. They also, a quick tangent, they also gave voice to another character, the little man who basically appears in most of the shorts as, an antagonist. He's voiced by Wallace Shawn in this, who, of course, Wrexham Toy Story and, The Princess Bride and everything. If you've seen something in the last 40 years, you have seen something with Wallace Shawn in it. And if Matt Frewer was like a miscast, Wallace Shawn is perfectly cast. He is the perfect voice for that kind of character, and they got that spot on. I will say that much.
Yeah, Wallace Shawn certainly worked for the little guy for the most part. I mean,
exactly.
It's very. I mean, I will say this: like for Matt Frewer being the Pink Panther, it honestly could have been a whole lot worse. And
it definitely could have.
And the times that he does like do, and like this short in particular, like the times that he does do like the whole geeky spiel, it certainly does work. I can't say it works perfectly, but it does to an extent work.
Exactly right. So yeah, basically the short opens up with like a storybook opening and narrator. Funny that we're doing two media pieces in a row that opens like this. But yeah, it starts off with a very cute little comedic thing. The Panther being a wizard to a king, and turning the basically broomsticks into hockey players is a cute little joke. Now the interesting thing about this is the character designs are kind of all over the place. Because you got the Panther and the little man who look pretty much identical to they are 60s versions, maybe a little bit more stylized, but they look perfectly fine. You have the other knights who look more like almost Warner Brother characters. And then you have the human form of, the Princess Muffy, who honestly looks a little bit like a Johnny Bravo character.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like the knight in the short does do a brief little Johnny Bravo.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it was Jeff Bennett voicing him. But yeah, that was a great show. I wish we could discuss this on it, but we'll have to see about that. But anyway, the interesting thing is that, like I said earlier, the basically whole setting of the short and the tone of the short is not like the original ones. That doesn't mean that it's bad though. It is pretty funny and it is pretty well done. The animation for the most part is actually pretty decent, although I did notice a couple of glaring errors. Like there's one part where the knights walk past the Panther and they're talking and their lips aren't even moving. It's like that's something that is kind of surprising that they got away with that, especially for a pretty decently budgeted show. I can
I can see what you mean. It's not a huge detractor, but it is something that
you notice it. It's like, oh, how they did no one at the studio notice that? It's not as bad as anything like from Deke Entertainment or anything like that. But it is no, Deke.
You know what you are.
Yeah, it's nothing like. Yeah, it's nothing like, for example, the countless errors of like the Super Mario Brothers Super Show or any of its sequels. But yeah. So this basically short is funny. It has some cute gags. I like the brief cameo of the anteater and that was funny, and a little brief tangent on those shorts. And it's actually way funnier if you watch it in German because they made one change from the English dub to the German dub. They made the anteater a woman, and they seriously, no, they actually made the character a woman and they gave it a woman's voice and everything. It's the same voice actress who apparently played the Queen of Hearts and Miss Piggy, so she has that kind of voice. And
damn.
It's actually way funnier. It's just her delivery of the lines alone are just so like over the top and exaggerated. It actually is way, way funnier. You don't even have to really know German to watch it. Just definitely look it up. It really, really, they're great. And that's probably one of the best dubs that I've seen of anything. But getting back to this, the sequence with the knights are a little bit more like the Looney Tunes in the way it's done. And again, the interesting thing is that the Panther in this he's kind of more like a Bugs Bunny trickster compared to, again, I'm not going to keep comparing, apples to oranges, but in the original, he's more of like an everyman type. He reacted to things. He wasn't really, the cause of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I see.
Yeah, the OG Pink Panther was sort of the rule of cool straight man who just had stuff happen to him. This Pink Panther seems to be more of an instigator kind of guy.
Yeah,
exactly.
he seems
That's
more
exactly
like
what I was getting at.
He seems like a little geek, kind of.
Yeah, but like I said, there were a lot of cute gags. Like, for example, the part with the wind-up little toy dragon fooling the knights was good. Some of, the little references were very well done. And now it is time for us to get to the main attraction of the episode, the Dragoness Muffy. So basically, the setup for this is that the Panther is the court wizard, and he's sent by, the little man who here is the king. And he basically has to cure the princess of her cold, basically. And he tries that with all kinds of different spells. None of them work. And one of them turns her into a dragoness. Now, the sequence here, it's interesting. It's almost the exact opposite of Ludmilla's from Bartok the Magnificent. And then it starts with the head and it goes down to the body. Unlike that, this is more instantaneous because, granted, they only had 9 minutes for the episode. With that being said, she definitely has a fun design as a dragoness. She is kind of unique in that regard, in that the head shape and the snout is kind of curved differently than what you would see in most dragonesses. The little, I don't know, were they like a little antennae at the top of her head? I don't know what purpose they served, but they were also a pretty cute little detail. And of course, they made her very rotund. Let's say that much. Very bottom heavy with the shape, which.
Yes.
Exactly.
Like,
very, bottom heavy, which definitely helped out with the character design in a way. Kind of like the basically Disney Dragonesses, or almost Bluth in a way. And of course, her voice is deepened from the transformation, which is always a nice touch. And of course, the first thing she does after transforming is going on a rampage, which kind of happens a lot, it seems, with Dragoness transformations. Another reference are like with Ludmilla and several others.
Let's be fair, though. I mean, if you had a fucking sneezy fit and pretty much got turned into a freaking dragon immediately after because you thought it would, because like your wizard was thought it like had the wrong spell and whatnot, you'd be a little miffed too. Let's be fair.
Oh no, definitely, exactly. But yeah, like I said, one aspect of her that I do like that is pretty cute, and it's never commented on. No one ever comments on it, but it's really cute. Is like the almost miniature, almost like vestigial wings on her. In a way, it's not like Narissa's where it's trying to look imposing. Her appearance is more comical, but yet it is something that is cute and it's almost kind of comical, and they never draw attention to that, which is an interesting part of it, basically. But yeah, like I said, her voice and her design definitely make this probably one of the better parts of the episode. Muffy herself is one of the better parts of it. One interesting thing is that when she like roars and makes dragoness noises, it seems like it's electronically pitched lower. Now, I don't know if it's Frank Welker or not, because again, looked in the credits, couldn't find any. I looked on like IMDb and couldn't find any sign of him being it. So this is the second episode of a row where we don't know if Frank Welker did the voice of a dragoness or not. And it's also the second episode in a row that has like these little storybook transitions. And one that I really liked was kind of the one that almost went to the, I guess you could say, commercial break for the episode, where it actually switched back to them with like storybook-like designs. That was something that was really neat, and to be honest, I wouldn't mind if the whole episode had like these almost like etching designs, because it definitely would have been something to make this episode, really this show, stand out from some of the other ones that are being made at the time.
Yep.
That certainly does sound very like a very natural thing.
Yeah, as we said earlier, the Panther here is more of an instigator than a suave, cool character, and nowhere is this scene more than the part where he is basically taunting the knight. It almost is, and again, I compared him to Bugs Bunny earlier, this part is very much Looney Tunes-esque in the way that he basically reacts to the knight, how he basically makes him a fool and things like that. It really does feel like, they took an inspiration from that And it's done pretty all right. It's done not as good, of course, the classic Warner Brothers stuff, but for what it is, for like a show in 1993, it's pretty decent stuff.
That
I
is
get
very
turning
true.
the Panther into Bugs Bunny effectively. It's just that they are two completely different characters that each serve their own purpose.
Exactly. It's like, if it ain't broken, why fix it? That kind of thing.
If it ain't broke,
Yeah,
don't
that's
fix. Yeah.
true.
Exactly. It's like, they could have easily probably done this episode with the original characterization of the Panther and not have him talk. Although then again, you'd have to find a way to tell the story visually, though I'm sure you probably could.
You probably could, yes.
Yeah. But Muffy's facial expressions are really well done. The part where he traps her in a giant phone booth is very much Bugs Bunny-esque. And basically the part with the door appearing out of nowhere, the first thing I thought up of, because again, I'm probably, a huge Nintendo geek, first thing I thought up of was, oh, she's going to SubCon.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, the sequence in the boxing ring, again, is something very Looney Tunes-esque, which really begs the question, was this script meant for like a, revival of like, say, the Looney Tunes, like, so that they were putting on TV at the time, but then that show got scratched and they were like, let's use it for this character. But even though I say that, the sequence with the boxing ring and with the various facial expressions, this does have pretty decent animation, all things considered, especially for, 1993, where, you had a lot of other companies that are putting out a lot worse stuff. So visually, this looks good, and the story is really good too. I have to admit, probably the best part for me, I don't know about you guys, was the last few minutes of the episode with, the knight actually still being in love with Muffy, despite, her gigantic dragoness form and that. And like you said, he does do a little bit of Johnny Bravo, which makes me wonder if it was Jeff Bennett voicing him. Again, couldn't find him in the credits.
Yeah.
But and of course you have, the little man, gives her away basically in that, and he makes a pretty good joke about, you should have seen how much he can eat in that. And then, he's always good. Wallace Shawn puts in a good performance, and the animation of him, too, as the little king is also well done. But then we come to the twist ending, which is probably the most fun part of the show and of the episode. And that, the Panther, in all this chaos, never solved the problem, and he tries to solve it. But, of course, Muffy accidentally sneezes, and the entire kingdom is turned into dragons. Which in itself is very, classic fairy tales. But then there's another twist at the end of the episode. It's like, a double, twist ending kind of thing. And that was, a father dragon basically telling his daughter, a fairy tale story of, why people are dragons now. Which, again, is something that only comes up in, like, the last, 10 seconds. But it's a concept that really kind of puts the whole episode on its head in a way.
Yeah,
I like that. I did not expect that going. And that was very... almost a sharp, clever writing for a show that, in a time period that really you would not expect that from.
Yeah, that is very much. Yeah, that was very surprising, even for me.
It was
it's
actually kind of adorable in a way.
Oh no,
Yeah,
this is a very, very
adorable.
wholesome ending, especially for this kind of show, because I watched several other episodes just as research, and this far and away is the best one. This has like a cohesive story. It actually has like an ending that, pretty much wraps everything up in a bow. It doesn't feel rushed, whereas the other ones kind of do, or the other ones go all over the place with their plot lines or with the characterization and that. But despite that,
genuine.
That's what it is. This felt genuine. Some of the other episodes felt like they were just being rushed out to, fill, we got to fill like a 56 episode quota. Okay, let's do this and this and this and this. And they do bring back the older characters. They bring back like, the Anteater and the Ant. They bring back Inspector Clouseau. But they also have a bunch of new characters like these mobster dogs and this like, witch doctor. And none of them really click together. It feels like you could tell what came from the original shorts in the 60s and what came from like the 90s, executives. You can really feel like the difference between them.
Yeah.
Now, with all that being said,
minutes of this, it was really funny because the only thing that kept going through my head during those last couple minutes was, how was this made specifically for this podcast?
It does. It feels exactly like it. It's like they went back in time and they knew that a podcast about, dragonesses and, female dinosaurs, scalies and all that were going to be made. So they made this specifically for us. That's so weird. And I actually remember watching this show because they aired it a very long time ago on Cartoon Network, a very long time ago. This is like 21 years ago already, something like that. But I do remember seeing that. I remember seeing this episode and thinking nothing of it. And now when you go back and watch it, it's like, hey, wait a minute, did they really do that?
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, this show as a whole, it has its moments. I mean, it's not totally terrible. It's not stuff like, some of the other, remakes like Hanna-Barbera's Popeye and Son, which is just awful in every way. Don't watch. If you can take one thing away from this episode, do not watch the Hanna-Barbera Popeye and Son cartoon. It is horrible. Watch, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, what happened is that by this time with the Pink Panther franchise, they were really trying to basically milk every last drop of it. Not so much with this show, although I'm pretty sure this show was made to coincide with it. They were because Peter Sellers, getting back to the movies here, a little bit of a tangent again, back to the original Pink Panther films. Peter Sellers hated Blake Edwards so much, he wrote his own script for a Pink Panther movie. So what happened, Blake Edwards was going to make one, and then Peter Sellers was going to make one. It was kind of like what happened with, Octopussy and Never Say Never Again. Basically, when they had the two James Bond films fight against each other in the box office, they were going to do that with the Pink Panther. That one was going to have, all the characters in the Pink Panther franchise minus Clouseau, and one was going to have Clouseau without any of the other characters. No Inspector Dreyfus, no Kato, no... what was his partner's name? Hercule, I think. None of those guys. But what happened is Peter Sellers died in 1980. So Blake Edwards managed to make, I think, 3 Pink Panther movies. No, 3 or 4. Three Pink Panther movies without Peter Sellers. They were still making them in 1992, and Peter Sellers had been dead for 12 years. So they made 3 Pink Panther movies with no Clouseau. The first one just basically was a bunch of outtakes and deleted scenes stitched together with a framing device of a reporter looking for Inspector Clouseau. The second of the Clouseau-less Pink Panthers basically had an American detective and was trying to be more like Police Academy than Pink Panther. And the third one starred Roberto Benigni as Inspector Clouseau's illegitimate Italian son. And none of them are very good. And I do not recommend any of them because they kind of got pathetic near the end. And it's a shame because Blake Edwards, otherwise, he made some excellent movies. He made The Days of Wine and Roses, which is a real big tearjerker. He made S.O.B., which is one of the greatest satires of the entertainment industry ever. He made Victor Victoria with Julie Andrews, which is another fantastic movie. But yet the sad thing is, he kept trying to chase a franchise that, let's face it, no Peter Sellers, no Pink Panther movies. Now, there were the reboots, of course, with Steve Martin, but those were a totally different thing. But in terms of...
They were very enjoyable, too.
Yeah, they were good for what they were, but I'm talking about the attempts at doing the original Pink Panther continuity without Peter Sellers. It was doomed to failure, like day one. They should have just stopped the franchise and just, cut their losses instead of trying to chase a hide they never were going to get.
Yep.
Now, with the cartoon, The Pink Panther, a new show called Pink Panther and Friends came out in the early 2010s, and it was a lot more faithful to the original shorts. I watched some episodes, and they're pretty good. They're not bad. They're clearly animated in Flash, which kind of a shame, because it's a little bit cheaply done, but it definitely is a lot more faithful to the original version of the Pink Panther than this. Unfortunately, it aired on Boomerang, so it didn't get a lot of viewership.
It's all coming back to you.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame. And there has been
Boomerang had a
talk
bad show.
No, it's not at all. It's not at all. I watched some episodes on YouTube, and it works. For what it is, it's funny, and it works. And one thing that is very funny is apparently in the German version, they still kept the Anteater as a female. They had, a voice that sounded like, they didn't change it. I love that. They're like, 40 years later, they're like, 40, 50 years later, they're like, should we fix our mistake from the dub? No, we're doing this the way we've always done it.
Ron Big and Ron Moose.
Exactly.
Keeping the shit post.
But yeah, apparently a reboot of the franchise that was going to have basically the animated Panther in it. It was going to be like a live action animated hybrid. No Inspector Clouseau, apparently. So
That
I don't
probably
know how that would
wouldn't
have
have made
been.
it work.
There's been a reboot for it in the
Yeah.
works for like years now. Nothing has come of it. And to be honest, I don't know if anything will because it's been so long. It feels like it's like tied up in so much like development hell. Maybe it'll come out someday, but I'm not sure. And it's a shame because again,
Who
this
knows?
was a pretty good film series, and it was a pretty good cartoon series, and it seems in a way to have fallen by the wayside, like a lot of them have. I mean, granted, the passage of time, that always happens. No one is asking for more like, Farmer Gray cartoons or anything like that nowadays. No one's asking for more like, Terry Toons or Woody Woodpecker that. With that being said, I do feel it's kind of a shame that there doesn't seem to be as much of an appreciation for the classics as there once was.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah.
really is a shame.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And that brings us into our question of the week, which is, what classic characters do you want to see new adaptations of? Now, I'll go
That-
first,
Oh, okay.
and I'll basically say, now that we know, what they could do, they are fantastic animators and all, we have to get the Cuphead developers to do new version of Betty Boop. I mean, they are the closest that I have ever seen any animator in the modern day come remotely close to like the greatness of like the Fleischer style. They have it down to a science. This is like almost incredible. It's like they were, animators from the 30s that traveled into the future basically. That this really does feel like they took everything from the original style of the Max Fleischers. And I really would like to see them do something with Betty Boop, who otherwise has been just a merchandising character for the past, 50 years or so? Now, there was an attempt to make a Betty Boop movie in the 90s, but it kind of, I guess, also fell into development hell. There's pictures of it online. It looks like it would have been great. That definitely copied from, the original style of the shorts. They had Coco the Clown, they had Bimbo the Dog, they had basically, none of the, new characters like Grampy or that. They really, I think, were going to make this a good thing, but it fell by the wayside. Now, with that being said, if they were to make a new Betty Boop, I feel like the only way you could do it justice is if you kept it in the time period of the shorts. If you kept it basically in the 1930s with her being the character she is, because that's the problem with some of these updates. You try to update these characters to the new day, and it never really clicks. It always feels off. It feels like it doesn't, that something is missing and something is wrong. It just has that feeling that basically it doesn't work. But yeah, that's my answer for what classic characters that I really hope make a comeback. Either her or Popeye, because judging from Cuphead and that, I've seen a lot of the bosses. You have Hilda, who basically is olive oil, and you have the pirate captain who really is just Bluto as
Bluto,
Sinbad
yeah.
the sailor from Popeye versus
Yeah.
Sinbad the sailor. But yeah,
is
I
true.
really hope that they get to do something with the Fleischer IP because they deserve it. These guys are phenomenal, and it would be such a missed opportunity if we don't get that.
And real quick, a funny coincidence that you bring up the Betty Boop movie. Same studio that made this. That was actually going to be their first movie, and it just fell through, like you said, and the only movie they ever made was All Dogs Go to Heaven 2.
Wow.
Or at least theatrically.
Really? I thought
Damn.
All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 was Ambulation. Wow. I didn't know it was this.
Huh.
No, that was one. Two was
Oh, right.
MGM Animation.
Oh, right. I get it. Wow, that's a shame because honestly, with those screenshots, it looked like they really were gonna give it their all with that, and real shame it fell through because it could have been a really great project, though. That happens with a lot of animation studios, and we'll probably talk about one that kind of fell by the wayside when we do the We're Back, a Dinosaur Story episode, which will probably be out sometime later this year. But yeah, no, that is such a shame because that movie looked like good, and it really looked like they were trying for it. It really looked like, this was just like a kind of proof of concept that they could do animation, they could pull it off and whatnot. That, I feel like, really would have shown that they could do a style of an animation style that hasn't been popular in, let's face it, in many, many decades, and it really would have been great. So, Angron, what would you have to say is your answer?
This is where things get complicated. What actually defines a classic character, like in terms of like time frame? Like, I know we have like Popeye, I know we have like Bimbo, I know we have like something along the lines of Oswald. I know Oswald's getting a return, sort of.
Nice.
But yeah, honestly, I'm gonna have to go 3 ways on this one, and they
Go right
are
ahead.
all very, very, very technical. The first one I kind of want to see back is Dragon Tales, because Dragon Tales, by all accounts, is a very classic show. It has classic characters, a classic premise, and hell, I was more or less not exactly disappointed with the show. There were a few stinkers here and there, but I didn't hate them.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, problem is someone has already someone I am very much familiar with and am very much aware that they and I have a technical history, but they themselves have certain ideas on how the show should be like rebooted, how the characters should come back, and I agree with most of it, but some of it I'm still a little technical on. It's complicated to explain. I'm not going to explain it here, but yeah, that's technicality number 1. Number 2, I kind of want to see the cast of the Wuzzles return. In particular, freaking what's her name? Oh yeah, what? In particular, Hoppopotamus, because
Hell
that's
yeah.
a good callback. That's a good
because by
callback.
all accounts, she is pretty much the multi-character of that franchise.
She is.
She's the
Exactly.
she's the token beauty. She's the aspiring character. She basically is the mom of the. She's basically the technical
local
mom of the
cast.
group, if not Butterbear.
Yeah.
Like, she does a lot. Hell, she even subverts the damsel in distress trope even more so than something like, say, Dragon in Distress or even Muffy for the most part.
Yeah, I can definitely say.
But
It's weird that they didn't get anything with like the DuckTales reboot, because they brought back pretty much everything from that time period, but I guess they forgot to put those characters in.
They did, technically. We did get that in the form of an episode of DuckTales where where it was like a Darkwing Duck episode, but it was like them like fighting against time or space for that matter, and apparently there was a brief nod to the Wuzzles at that point.
I really did not like the DuckTales reboot, to be honest.
I mean, I understand why. The art style certainly did throw off a lot of people. It certainly didn't throw off me, since it honestly, I didn't really like. The only thing that really threw it off for me was the colors, but even then it honestly worked. The art worked, the story worked, the characters certainly worked, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I understand why you think that. But yeah, back to Wuzzles. The technicality with that revolves around Disney and Hasbro. So yeah, it's unlikely we're going to be getting those back.
Right.
Number 3, weirdly enough, is less about a company for the most part and more about the potential. And this is basically going to be my pick overall for the character that I want to see get rebooted. I kind of want to see Cool Cat from the W7 era make a return. Now, hear me out on this. I will admit the W7 era is a very uncomfortable and rather dark period for Looney Tunes in general. It certainly probably had its moments here and there, I'm not gonna lie, but for the most part it was probably bad. However, Cool Cat, in my eyes, would work a lot better than the 90s freaking Pink Panther for several reasons. One, his voice, for starters. It would probably work better for him to speak rather than the Pink Panther. He's got a laid back, cool voice. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he would have essentially been like WB's answer to Pink Panther for the most part. That being said, however, I also imagine that there's potential with Cool Cat. Like, have him go through like more or less freaking similar adventures, like similar trippy adventures in the same vein as Sam and Max meets again Pink Panther, but have him be like more laid back for the most part. Have him be like chill, like he's Cool Cat, for crying out loud. He should be cool, for lack of a better term. And I will admit that I do also want to see some diversity. I want to see him struggle. I want to see him get angry. I want to see him like actually have personality on par with something like Daffy Duck, freaking Donald Duck even. However, I also imagine him being like one of the more laid back straight people, like say Nico Robin. Like, he's just there to have a good time, and he gets enjoyment out of seeing all this stuff. I do want to see diversity with Cool Cat. I want to see him, like, go through stuff. I just don't want him to be a static character. But I can also understand why that probably wouldn't happen. So yeah, my pick is 100% going to be Cool Cat, because Cool Cat, in my eyes, is honestly is the better of the W7-3 original characters. 4, technically, but 5 if you want to get even more technical. But yeah, I kind of want to see Cool Cat again. I kind of want to see him at least get nodded or have an episode like of the Looney Tunes like devoted to him in like a more smooth manner. Like, let's see here. There's a short of freaking Sugar Bear from like the 90s where he's like super smooth, super well animated. It's like, oh man, it's really impressive to look. It's really smooth to look at. And honestly, a lot of ads from the 90s were kind of like that. And I kind of want to see Cool Cat in that particular style. You know what I mean? Like,
I definitely can understand it, because he's a character, again, like you said, that has a lot of potential, and he came at a time when I feel like, WB as a whole, they were just kind of limping to the finish line with animation.
Yeah.
And famously with the WB, we'll probably talk about this in, a later episode, but this is going a little tangent. WB famously did not care about animation. Jack Warner allegedly never even watched the shorts before shipping them off to theaters and that. So it really does, like you said, feels like a missed opportunity for the character of Cool Cat. And again, you make a really good point there that it could be cool and interesting, Cool Cat, haha. It really could be neat to see him in, a modern context, and basically to take this almost forgotten character and kind of breathe life into it. A character that really was so obscure and, for so many years, just to be breathe life into him. That would be really good.
I will say this though: don't make him a carbon copy cutout of freaking Bugs Bunny, because that was, I feel, because I get the point for the most part. I kind of feel like that was sort of the intention with Cool Cat. He was sort of like a mix of Bugs Bunny meets not Daffy Duck, Pink Panther. But yeah, I kind of want him to be his own particular character, like sort of like Pink Panther-esque, but a lot more laid back and a lot more fitting, honestly. Like, he would be a lot more fitting in like the scenario he would be in. Like, he would actually be allowed to speak, unlike Pink Panther, who works better with silent, So
exactly, you're exactly right.
So yeah, that's 100% Cool Cat for me. Sorry for my long spiel.
No, by all means, we like listening to it. Believe me, there's no problem with it at all. No problem.
Okay, that's nice to hear. All right, who's next?
Math.
Okay, real quick before I actually get to my answer, when you were saying, "Oh, nobody wants to see more Woody Woodpecker," just in my head was going Hans Moleman. I want to see more Woody Woodpecker.
I didn't mean that as a negative thing. I didn't mean that as a negative thing. No.
I just had to, yeah, but,
I didn't mean like that. Sorry about that, man.
But my answer, I said this in an earlier episode, gargoyles. We
Hell
need
yeah.
more gargoyles. That was a great
yeah.
series back in the day, and it's just been relegated to the dustbin since. The way that you would bring it back is keep it in that 90s retro future tech, all the Alien series, and just continue how it was. Update the animation style if you have to. Bring back as much of the old voice cast as you can. Just there's so much potential for a great action series, and it's just sitting there collecting dust. I'm amazed nothing's been done with it.
Honestly, I kind of agree. I kind of want to see Mighty Ducks make a return. Like, more or less, it has some cookie cutter elements, but it honestly looked very It honestly looks very interesting. Like Gargoyles certainly went in depth and whatnot, and I understand why why Mighty Ducks was a little bit of a touchy thing, but come on, it's freaking Turtle Mania, but with ducks. And honestly, for what they do, it's pretty interesting. I mean, they got freaking Tim Curry, for crying out loud.
Always a good point.
Yeah. So yeah,
just like do something with gargoyles. That's all I'm asking.
Exactly.
Yeah, do something with Mighty Ducks too. Like, it's good. It's actually has merit, man. Like, it's not absolute horseshit. I saw a trailer for it on a freaking VHS in school. It looked amazing. Years later, saw it. It was awesome. Well, okay, not awesome, but it was really entertaining. I liked it. Man. I'm nostalgic for Mighty Ducks and Tanya.
Nothing wrong with that. So, Stryker, what would you have to say?
One real quick thing that I noticed.
Yes.
Amblimation actually made 3 films.
Oh.
Which was
Bible Goes West, We're Back, and Balto.
Yeah, and then later on, they were rebranded as DreamWorks Animation.
What?
Okay, I did not know that. Wow, I mean, I guess that makes sense because Steven Spielberg's involvement in Ambulation, but wow. I thought that, they start off as, Pacific Digital Imaging. I did not know they started out as Ambulation. That is incredible. Wow.
That is awesome. They're responsible for most of Balto and like a bunch of other stuff. Just wow.
Yeah,
honestly, that kind of makes sense for the most part.
Shrek even.
Rebranded is a little bit wrong. The studio closed, and then they went to form DreamWorks.
I figured
that. But still,
all the employees went on to make DreamWorks Animation. Sorry, I misspoke.
No problem at all.
Nice,
Sorry,
nice.
It's all good. It's all good.
Very neat.
So, what would the character you would like to see make a comeback be?
That's hard to think about because, like, there's so many different series that I enjoyed from when I was a kid.
That is pretty tricky.
Yeah, but then I thought about different other like older series, like anime.
Ooh, nice.
I did too, not gonna lie.
And while yes, they did a reboot film based on it with well, you probably already know which movie I'm talking about with Freddie Highmore and Nick Cage.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Go on.
I want to see a reboot of Astro Boy.
Oh yeah, I actually liked the movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't too campy. It wasn't too like pop culture and whatnot. It honestly felt like a comfortable reintroduction to Astro Boy, and I kind of want to see more of Astro Boy too.
Definitely. That's a character that I am really shocked is not as popular as he is, especially for how. I mean, come on, it's Tezuka. How do you not,
Like, honestly, the only thing kind of holding it back would kind of be the original source material, which was a different time, admittedly,
Yeah, it
and
was
also
the
it's
60s.
Japan. Don't question it. Like seriously, they had an image
Yeah.
of like him getting his butt pumped with oil. I
Yeah,
shit you not.
that's Japan. It's Japan.
It's
What do you
Japan.
expect?
Don't question it.
Yeah,
That's all
just
I can say.
Don't question it. Don't think about it. It was different. It's a different it's a
Time.
different country, different morals, all that.
Yeah,
Different time,
like
too.
they
Don't
have a
forget, this is
festival
like
that
the
separates
50s,
that
60s.
celebrates dongs for
Yeah.
crying out loud that represent like
Yeah,
rebirth or
yeah.
something like. So honestly,
Yeah.
I'm not too surprised that they did that, but still, it's just wow. Yeah.
So that just leaves LuckyEevee. What would you have to say?
Honestly, and then Eddie.
Mm.
That's one of my favorite. That was one of my favorites growing up.
Same. I feel like though a reboot. I'm not saying anything's wrong, but I'm just saying I feel like a reboot for them wouldn't really work because I feel like for that it kind of
I'd
wraps
say
it up.
I'd say a sequel series more than
Yeah, a sequel
I see
series
what you're
would
saying.
seem to work.
Yeah, that I could
Do
see.
justice.
Like,
Yeah, not like a
seriously.
reboot or anything, but like a continuation. That would be more than perfectly fine.
Yeah, continue after the movie and there's a series.
Oh hell yeah!
Okay.
Would not
Yeah, that
mind
would work.
seeing them as adults, to be honest.
No, I like those
I've
YouTube
seen a few
videos and
fan
that.
projects that actually had them like legit teenagers, which
I've
I
seen those
kinda
too on
wanna
YouTube.
see.
They're really well done. So now it is time. Oh, sorry.
And modern Ed and Eddie would work because their style of humor actually is kind of what's popular right now.
Oh, definitely. They could really,
Honestly, yeah.
capitalize on this.
Just keep it the same, and it'll be even more popular than
Exactly.
the
Than it was
original
even
series.
in the 90s and 2000s.
Hell yeah!
Yep. So now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness Scale.
Yeah.
And we are going to rank, of course, Muffy today. I am going to give her probably a. I'm really thinking hard here. After consideration, I am probably going to give her a 8 out of 10. That seems low, and I really enjoy her design. I enjoy the characterization with her. Of course, the ending is a definitely big boost for why she gets those points. The voice too. But I feel like for a lot of it, she's not really in the episode as much. I granted, she
Yeah.
is the focal point, and of course, she does have a lot of good screen time and a lot of good parts, like again with the boxing ring and that. But as an overall whole, I kind of feel like she didn't really have as big of a part as she could. Now, with that being said, she has a fantastic design. I like the voice. I like the basically, idea of her, the transformation, of course, the shape, and all of it. It all comes together to make a really great character. But again, if she had just a little bit more screen time, we probably would be looking at a 9 out of 10.
Yeah,
So,
I agree
Angron?
on that. I am going to have to be a little harsher.
Okay.
It might change, but for now, I'll say a 6 out of 10.
Ooh.
Of a generous 7 out of 10. Just again for being generous, but
Okay.
we'll get to that in a moment. Personality-wise, she doesn't seem like a royal brat. The only reason she's bratty for the most part is because she has a freaking sneezing fit, and like it's getting in the way of her finding a suitable knight and whatnot. And honestly, I very much understand that, but otherwise, like her initial first impression was not terrible, but it's kind of middle of the road. She gets a little better come her being a dragon. Like she gets she gets very much angry at the fact that she became a dragon, and the fact that she ultimately just goes on a rampage for it, and the fact that it just pretty much devolves into a freaking cartoon is just it's just very much interesting. I will say though, I very much like how it all wrapped up very nicely for her. Like she didn't come she later came across as someone who wasn't exactly let me think here. Who wasn't exactly snobbish or anything, but and she very much came across as a someone who just wanted something to get out of her way. That's another thing that's very weird. throughout the thing she like sneezes, but then like immediately when like the Pink Panther throws the magic powder at the group and everyone turns to dragon, she's like, "Hey, I'm cured." Like, could she have been allergic to other people? Maybe that's very weird.
Good point.
But
I never thought of that before. That's actually a good point. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I get where you're coming from.
But yeah, it wraps up. But again, because it wraps up very nicely, and because she herself wraps up very nicely, she becomes a lot better of a character. To be honest, like she started off okay initially, but she gradually got a little better and like leaned into the madness a little bit. So you know what? Yeah, I think I'm gonna do 7 out of 10. She's not perfect by any means, but she's definitely one of those cases where she gets gradually better the more you watch it.
Okay.
Evie? LuckyEevee?
Yep. You there?
Yeah.
Good.
What score would you give Muffy?
5 out of 10.
Okay.
Huh.
It's
Any
a
particular
weird
reason?
antenna.
I see.
Yeah, I can see. I can see it. It's definitely a unique part of it. I can see why that could be off-putting for some people. So, Stryker?
I've given her a 9 out of 10
Ooh, nice. Okay.
because, like, I don't know, something about it just reminded me of a lot of things that I saw from when I was a kid, and I loved it.
Oh,
I
no,
loved
by
her
all means.
design.
I definitely can see why, you know.
It was nostalgic. It was the character, the voice, the design. It just felt like something I saw when I was a kid. It was good.
No, it definitely is. Definitely. I can really see that. So, Mathmachine, what would you have to give her?
Unfortunately, I gotta go 6. Just
Okay.
the design just most of the design I'm fine with. It's the face that throws me. The giant eyelashes, the furrowed brow, and it looks kind of like she has a monobrow in a lot of shots. Just it just does not click with me, and I just do not like the character that much in general. Like Angron says, as the short goes on, she actually does get better. And the last couple minutes, I actually do like her, and they seem to have changed her design a little in that last couple minutes, and it looks fine then. But for the majority of the short, I just do not care for it that much.
All right. So, yep, that about wraps it up for this episode of Fiery Discourse. If you have any questions or if you want to discuss other classic cartoon characters or reboots of such, you can feel free to email us at fierydiscourse@outlook.com or follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/fierydiscourse.
Did Stryker give his thing or?
Yeah,
or
I
not?
did.
Yeah,
Oh, never mind. All
No
right.
problem. It's all right.
So everyone gave their
next-
thing?
Yeah, everyone did.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
Later,
So,
y'all.
Yep, next time we're going to be talking about the 1961 British kaiju movie, Gorgo. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch and, to see that kind of movie, to see a different kind of a giant monster movie. Definitely be fun to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So, until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next week, take care.
Peace.
Adios.
Peace out.
Yep.